Hey everyone! Today we're tackling a big topic, one that can feel super overwhelming, applying for Social Security disability if you're living with fibromyalgia. So let's jump right in and try to make this whole thing a lot clearer. I mean, where do you even begin, right? If you've ever even glanced at the paperwork, it can feel like you're lost in this impossible maze. And it's even tougher when you're dealing with something like fibromyalgia, what a lot of people call an invisible illness, because, your struggles aren't always something people can see on the outside. But here's the thing, and this is the good news. It's not a random maze with no way out. The Social Security Administration, the SSA, they actually have a very specific roadmap they follow for fibromyalgia claims. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk through that map together, piece by piece. So this official map, it has a pretty formal name, Social Security Ruling 12-2P. Now, that might sound a little technical, but all you need to know is this is the exact document the SSA uses. It's their playbook, their rule book for your claim. And honestly, getting a handle on this is the absolute key to making your case. All right, so the first big landmark on this map is something called a medically determinable impairment, or MDI for short. Basically, this is just the SSA's official way of saying, okay, we recognize that your fibromyalgia is a real, legitimate medical condition. Before they even think about how it affects your life, you have to clear this first hurdle. And luckily, that ruling, SSR 12-2P, lays out two specific ways you can do just that. Okay, first step, proving your diagnosis. And here's the deal. To get that official recognition, your medical records have to tick the boxes on one of two different sets of criteria. And these aren't just random rules the SSA made up. They come straight from the American College of Rheumatology. So you've got two paths to choose from to get that MDI. Think of it like this. There's the 1990 tender point path, which is kind of the classic way. And then there's the 2010 symptom path, a more updated approach. The great thing is your evidence only needs to follow one of them. So let's dig into what each one requires. All right, let's talk about path one, the tender points. This is the more, let's say, traditional route. It really hinges on what a doctor physically finds during an exam, and there are three things you absolutely have to have. First up, a documented history of widespread pain. Second, a very specific physical exam, the tender point examination. And third, and this one's huge, proof that your doctor has ruled out other things that could be causing your symptoms. You need all three. No exceptions for this path. So let's zoom in on that widespread pain requirement. What does that actually mean? Well, the SSA wants to see in your medical records that the pain has been going on for at least 3 straight months. Not on and off, but continuous. Consistency in your records here is really, really important. And then there's that physical exam. It's not just any exam. A doctor has to check 18 specific, standardized tender points on your body. And to meet this requirement, the magic number is 11. The exam results need to show that at least 11 of those 18 spots are painful when the doctor presses on them. And last but not least for this path, and I can't stress this enough, your records have to show that your doctor did their due diligence. They need to have looked at other possibilities, things like lupus or MS or rheumatoid arthritis, and ruled them out. The SSA has to be confident that fibromyalgia is the right diagnosis, not just a guess. Okay, so what if a tender point exam was never done? Or what if your doctor uses a more modern approach? That brings us to path 2, the symptom checklist. This path is great because it shifts the focus away from that physical exam and looks more at the whole collection of symptoms you're experiencing. Now, you'll see a couple of familiar things here. Steps 1 and 3 are exactly the same as the other path. You still need that 3-month history of widespread pain. And you've got to show that other disorders were ruled out. The real game changer here is step 2. Instead of counting tender points, it's all about documenting other symptoms that keep showing up. So how many symptoms are we talking about? Well, the magic number for this path is 6. Your medical records need to show that you have repeated issues with at least 6 specific symptoms or conditions that often go hand in hand with fibromyalgia. And these aren't just any symptoms. The SSA is looking for some very specific things. We're talking about that crushing fatigue, the cognitive issues so many people call fibrofog, where your memory and focus just aren't there, or that feeling of waking up just as tired as when you went to bed. Plus, they look for other conditions that often tag along, like depression, anxiety, or even irritable bowel syndrome. Okay, so let's say you've done it. You've used one of those two paths, and your diagnosis is now officially recognized as a medically determinable impairment. High five! But that's really just the first half of the battle. Now comes the part where you have to show how all those symptoms actually limit your ability to function day to day. And this leads us to our next big piece of jargon, residual functional capacity, or RFC. All this is the SSA's official look at what you can still do in a work environment, day in and day out. They're going to look at everything: how long you can sit, stand, how much you can lift, but also things like your ability to concentrate and even just get along with coworkers. Now, as they're looking at all your limitations, there is one giant critical rule that applies to every single disability claim out there. And believe me, there's no wiggle room on this one. You have to prove that your symptoms, the ones that stop you from working, have either lasted for a full 12 months or are expected to last that long. It has to be continuous. A few bad months here and there just won't cut it. The SSA is looking for proof of a long-term, serious problem. So, with all that in mind, the big question is, how do you build the strongest case possible? How do you paint the clearest picture of your limitations? Let's get into the types of evidence that really, truly make a difference. First up, what they call longitudinal records. Fancy term, simple idea. It means a consistent medical history over time. You don't want big gaps in your treatment, because the SSA might see that and think, oh, they must have been feeling better. Next, specialist input is huge. An opinion from a rheumatologist, an actual fibromyalgia expert, carries way more weight than from a general doctor. Third, and don't sleep on this one, statements from other people. Hearing from family, friends, or even an old boss about how they've seen your fatigue or fibrofog in action can be incredibly powerful. And finally, your own notes. Keeping a journal or a log that details what a bad flare-up day really looks like for you, that can be gold. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? It's this: documentation is everything. And not just any documentation. It needs to be detailed, consistent, and come from different sources. Your claim file is basically telling a story, your story. And all these pieces, the medical records, the doctor's notes, the letters from family, those are the chapters that make your story real and believable to the person making the decision. And so that really leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at your own medical story, at all the paperwork and records, is it being told completely? Does it just say you have fibromyalgia, or does it actually show how fibromyalgia impacts your life every single day? Making sure that full picture is painted clearly, well, that's probably the most important part of this whole entire process.